What's the craziest crime you or somebody in your family has committed? My friend got blackout drunk and stole a bulldozer that had the keys left in it. He turned it on and obviously didn't know how to drive it, so he just ended up making the scoopy part go up and down for a bit before the cops came. They actually let him go too. Scoopy part. I laughed out loud at the scoopy part. The worst part is this isn't exactly rare, lol. They leave the keys in the things all the time. Plus I think there's only a few different cuts of keys they use. At least that's how it used to be. I know someone that was getting their street worked on, and they left the thing parked in a way that kinda blocked his driveway. So he went out, used his ring of keys until he found the one that fitted, and drove it across the street and parked it. I hope they were really confused about how it got moved, lol. Guy who used to go to my school led the cops on a 1-hour chase riding a bulldozer. Eventually the thing ran out of gas and that's when he got arrested. My sister-in-law worked on a ski hill. One week there was a promotion by a company where they would blow up big inflatables like the big gorillas you see in car lots. She had seen them blow them up and deflate them for days, so she knew what the deflated ones looked like. One day she was leaving work and one of these deflated mascot thingies was right behind her car. My sister-in-law has never stolen anything in her entire life, but at that moment she decided out of the blue that she wanted that blow up. She plopped it in the back and drove home. When I came to visit a couple weeks later she was freaking out about it. She asked me if I wanted it, just to get the evidence out of her house. That is the story of how I came to own it. A story high inflatable cow. Edit. Damn. This one blew up. So, everybody is asking but no. I don't have any pictures of the cow. It looked like this. Edit 2. A lot of people telling me I'm lying because I don't have photos from 20 years ago. So here, I dug through my old Facebook photos to find this. That's fantastic. Do you have pictures of your enormous heifer? Now this is a story all about how I came to own it. A story high inflatable cow. Shame it was a cow and not an inflatable. Sometimes the guilt gets to you. An ex-friend of mine had her jacket stolen from the bar. A week later sees the same jacket, thinks it is hers, and proceeds to steal it. For whatever reason she wasn't 100% sure it was hers. So she then would never wear it out of fear the person she may have stolen it from would recognize it. Months later I think she placed it in the lost and found as the guilt ate her alive. I'm certain it was the exact same ducking jacket she had stolen, but W/E. My dad's older brother came home from the war in Vietnam to find that his wife had been cheating on him with his best friend. He locked them both in the friend's house and burned it down with them in it. He held the firefighters off with a rifle until he was sure they couldn't be saved. Then he shot himself. This was before I was born, but I've seen some newspaper clippings about it. Edit. Several people asked how he kept them in the house alone. I asked my mother about it and she said that he locked them together in a small bedroom closet and barricaded the door from the outside so they couldn't get out. This was in the 1970s in New Orleans. I'm not gonna give more info as it'd be easy to tie back to me same last name or his daughter who was a little under 2 years old at the time. And I don't want that. Edit 2. Apparently, it's Vietnam and not Vietnam. Thanks for the corrections. That's a bit darker than I expected of this thread. Geez. People who glorifies wars are the one who never attend a war. I was on the other side of the Vietnam War and my aunt was born mentally disabled out of the Orange Agent war crime. Nothing good comes out of a war like the Vietnam War. My dad brought in a banana tree to the US from his home village in Kerala. He literally walked through customs with the tree in a pot in his arms. The customs lady asked him what he was thinking, and he just replied that the banana tree was from his mother's garden. The customs lady must have thought my dad was crazy, but she just let him walk right through. We still have that tree and its offspring. Customs lady, this is crazy your dad. No, this is bananas. Somewhat similar story. We had a small parrot when I was really little in the 80s, and we were apparently given him as a gift from my Peruvian uncle who smuggled it into the States. Little peep. No idea what kind he was, or how my uncle brought it over, but that's what I had been told again and again over the years. Edit. OMG guys. I knew I fricked it up when I saw all of the comments. Yes, it's parrot. not parent. My dad is a small Peruvian parent, but it's my understanding he was not smuggled in by my uncle, haha. My grandfather's cousin stabbed a waiter to death because he won't let him use the employees only restroom in his restaurant. Is your grandfather's cousin Jack Henry Abbott? When you gotta go. A distant cousin got her terminally ill father to give her power of attorney and then stole all of his money so she wouldn't have to split it with her brother. Edit. Don't worry. She did go to jail as her rush to clean him out involved a lot of fraud and forgery. Edit 2. Man, it is slightly depressing. How many of you have similar stories? What's up with people? A guy I went to school with in the 70s emptied his dementia-ridden father's life savings while he lived with him. 60 some years old and still stealing to support his coke habit. His sister found out and he did 5 years. Restitution $80k. No way he'll live long enough to pay that back. And 8 years probation. Something similar happened to my uncle, except he wasn't terminally ill. He was working in China and his longtime partner was trying to poison him in food/pills she sent him. Meanwhile at home she got power of attorney and put him hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, buying expensive stuff, paying off her kid's debt, etc. She went to the bank and got a friend to forge the POA. He finally realized that he felt sick whenever he took the items she gave him and found out what she was doing. He came home and tried to get her arrested, but I don't think she ended up doing much time at all. Has still in huge debt from her and mainly lives in the Philippines. It's not a bad crime or anything, but it was illegal at the time. So, in Germany, up until a few years ago, we still had a general draft for the army, and a generation ago it was very hard to get out of it. My uncle was a hardcore pacifist, so going to the army wasn't an option for him. But being accepted as a conscientious objector at that time basically required you to be a devout Christian and use the Bible as an argument for why you couldn't kill another human. And my uncle was also atheist. He couldn't realistically object, didn't want to go to the army and didn't want to go to jail. So he waited. He got sent his draft notice, passed the physical, and got a letter telling him to report to X company under Sergeant Y. He wrote back a reply on rose-colored paper, scented with perfume, about how much he was looking forward to serving under the strong leadership of Y, promising to obey every one of his orders, and that he can't wait to experience life in the barracks together with so many strong and muscular men. He was declared unfit for service shortly after. Now this is the kind of rule breaking I live to hear about. Cheeky illegitimate child. Haha. My grandfather was conscripted for WWII. Massive pacifist too. All it took in Australia is he told the Navy that he got his GF my grandma pregnant. Apparently that was one of the worst things you could do back then. He hadn't and they got married later on. But it was looked on so poorly back then they took his word for it as no one would lie about that. My dad when he was much younger and infinitely more stupid regularly used to drink drive with his friends. It was the early 70s and no one really cared. To hear him speak about it now, he can't believe how stupid he was. One night, he and his friend were out drinking. They heard there was a party going on at a pub across town and decided to head over. On the way they go past a large club with a queue of people waiting to go in. My dad decides to show off a bit and pull a skid. He miscalculated, hit a curb, and flipped the car. Sliding down the road on his roof, the car stops. They get out and leg it. To the cheers of the people in the queue. They get the bus back home and immediately call the police to report the car as stolen. The police knew what had happened, but couldn't prove anything. So your dad's story to the cops was the car was stolen and the thieves crashed it? Cousin got busted robbing a bank, got sentenced to jail, proceeded to break out of jail with his cellmate, and went on the run. Fast forward a few months and has living in a hotel room with his cellmate. Cellmate orders a pizza to the room, bad idea. Delivery guy recognized them and reported them to the police. They get arrested again and shortly after my cousin killed himself in prison. My cousin had a wife and a kid and got into a nasty coke habit. We don't bring him up anymore. I need to sleep soon. I read this too fast and saw broke out of jail with his cellmate living in hotel room and pizza and thought you were just describing the plot to Home Alone 2. This was a couple of generations back, early 20th century, but there was this guy who was constantly getting drunk and harassing my great aunt. So, one of her male friends dressed up in an Easter bunny outfit, put a bat in its giant fake carrot, and beat the dude with it. He got away with it, but I'm sure it helped that half the community was waiting for the day the guy's liver finally gave out. Edit. Okay. One small clarification. The bat in question was a baseball bat, not the flying mammal, though that's certainly an interesting visual, and I can't say I'm sorry for my small role in creating that image. Donnie Dark at his ass have a ducking carrot. My grandfather's father was a mean, abusive, hateful drunk who would come home from working in the mines long enough to terrorize his children and impregnate his wife and then leave again for mine work. He tried to set the house on fire, with wife and kids, 13 of them inside, twice. One day my grandfather and a couple of his siblings were picking berries across the road from the house, and his drunk father started taking potshots at them with a rifle. My grandpa, one brother, and his oldest sister took off running for the house with the agreement that the first one there would kill him, their father. My grandpa's sister got there first and shot him to death. She was never charged with a crime due to her age and the fact that everyone knew my great grandfather was a mean son of a bitch and had it coming. Eater. Wow. My most upvoted comment is about my family's mucked up history, lol. Edit 2. Thank you all so much for the awards. Also, RIP in barks, lol. Edit 3. Since some of y'all think it's fake, here's some proof. This sounds a lot like my grandma's dad. Because of this, she never drank a drop, and my grandpa promised her nobody would ever drink around her ever again. He kept that promise. My dad told me he once snuck into a tire warehouse. He cut the alarm and came in through a window on the roof and stole a bunch of tires, I guess. After that, he retired from his life of crime. Does he have any leftover tires? I'm looking for some 235/65 R18s. My dad's side of the family grew up as New Hampshire Hicks. My grandfather was stabbed in 2 different bar fights and burned down an entire country club because he thought they were too stuck up. He was never caught and went on to earn a Bronze and Silver Star in the Korean War, but unfortunately lost his leg too. Edit. Since this is getting some attention, I thought I might add that my grandfather got his deuce together, started a successful small business, and as a funny twist later joined that same country club as an old man. He never really felt welcome there, my dad said, though they weren't really his kind of people. Live free or die. My cousin in Youngstown, used to rob people selling goods on Facebook. Got caught after him and accomplice murdered a man over a PS3. Good times. Edit. I added a comment, but I figured this would get the fastest response to everyone. I'm linking the actual article for everything. I was off about some of the details. The victim was selling a computer and PlayStation to take care of his son. There were 2 involved. My cousin actually pulled trigger, had an accomplice driver. Most of my family is like this man, but I find it hard to call someone capable of such cruelty a man. Thank you all for the comments and have a good Christmas. This checks out for Youngstown. My aunt came home one evening to find that her son had broken in, killed her dog, and was eating it, and then tried to kill her. He was a hardcore addict and it fried his brain badly. Edit. Wow. Came home from shopping and this blew up. Okay, so to answer some questions / give context, I don't know what he was on at the time, but he was addicted to a myriad of drugs and meth was his drug of choice. It happened a few years ago and I don't know this side of the family that well. He was arrested and I believe has recently been released. And for those of you asking about the state of the dog, it was raw. Think zombie. And thanks to everyone for the awards. I missed 10 seconds ago when I didn't know this happened. What? Edit. Why are people upvoting me? I worked at a movie theater when Back to the Future was originally released. We used to take the entire movie ticket instead of tearing them and resell them to the next group coming in. The old theater was massive, sat 600 people. We probably made about 15k between 2 of us in month or so. Adjusted for inflation, it's about 37k. We were the richest high school kids in our town. Didn't the theater suspect that something was going on? I mean, thousands of people watching it, but official ticket sales are a few hundred people. My uncle sold Tim Allen the cocaine that got him sent to prison in the late 70s. So did Tim rat out your uncle? An uncle robbed a bank or was an accessory to the robbers. IDK. His brilliant escape when the police showed up was to go to the roof and jump off. He didn't do time. Just had to go to the hospital for a broken leg. I'll have to ask my mom when I get a chance. She knows the story better than I do. Aim for the bushes. My sister stole a puppy. Just walked into the pet store. Stuffed her up her jacket. Looking at these other things, she seems a lot less bold than she did before. Edit. Puppy tax. This was about 4 years before the dog died, I think. https://external preview point red pointed /06IWF89R90CWDMQ4EAVU6WPTDG5KWCR9RME width 1024 and auto webpend SE671B5C85793E3774. 11D36E566D0F3159D7D3E6 edit. This is now my most decorated and upvoted post or comment ever. That's hilarious. Hey, you want a puppy, you want a puppy. Parents can't do all the work. Once I went into Walmart, and when nobody would come to the pet section I bagged my own feeder goldfish, labeled them with the correct price, paid, and went home. I'm basically an outlaw. My uncle went to prison for chaining a cop to the back of his bike and driving down the highway. Edit. I feel like an edit is needed here because I want to say I'm not glorifying what my uncle did. I simply answered the question asked. This happened in the 1960s, before I was born. So I do not have many details due to the timing and fact he married into the family and that side of my family is not very close at all. What I do know is my uncle was a part of a very violent gang. I know nothing about what led to the attempted murder. Yes, the cop survived somehow, so I do not know if the cop was good or bad, but I do not believe very many people, if any, deserve to be tortured in such a manner or any manner. Wonder what chain of events led to this. Poor fella. I bet he kept up for the first mile or so. When I was a young teen, the boys from the neighborhood and I loved playing pinball and video games at our local bowling alley. Problem was we didn't have enough money to enjoy our new addiction. We decided to do something about that little problem. We started with a very rudimentary system. We actually scotch taped a piece of thread to a quarter and were able to fish it up and down a couple times before the string would break or the tape would give out. This worked fairly well, but we wanted and needed more. Our next plan was a little more professional. We somehow concocted a scheme to make quarters. A few lessons in science class had actually stuck, and we realized that we needed something to fool the coin mechanism in the pinball machine into thinking that whatever it was we made our quarters with was an actual quarter. We ended up deciding that lead would be our material of choice. We used lead for a couple of reasons. A couple of the guy's father was an avid hunter. He even reloaded his own shotgun shells. Because of this he had a burner set up in his shop to melt down lead. Another reason is that lead is not magnetic science. We made a mold out of plaster and used the burner to melt lead to make our quarters. But where to get more lead? One of us came up with the brilliant thought that tire weights were made of lead. Carrying screwdrivers and pliers we scoured the parking lots of shopping centers. We would wander through and drop down out of sight between cars. Using the tools we had brought we would manage to get the tire weights off with little trouble. We were in business. Our production line was soon up and running. We would melt lead, pour it into our mold, cool it and then move on to finishing our new quarter. The finishing process was crude, but effective. We would snip off the burr where the lead was poured. We would then file down the edge, making sure it stayed mostly round. Using steel wool and a polishing cloth we would then shine the quarters. Now came the trial run. We went to the bowling alley with a few quarters to see if our harebrained scheme would actually work. In they went, and the pinball machine lit up and was ready to be played. Success. We intensified our production and soon we had bunches of quarters. We were thrilled. We could play video games anytime we wanted. Every day after school you'd find us at the bowling alley, happily playing our games. But our downfall was soon to come. We never thought of the fact that someone might notice a bunch of fake quarters being used in their video games and pinball machines. It literally never crossed our early teenaged minds. We just knew we were having a blast. One fateful day we went to the bowling alley as usual. We started playing games and soon some men approached us. They started questioning us and accusing us. We were scared to death. One of the guys yelled run. And we took off as fast as we could. We made it to the doors and down the steps we went. We all lived on the same cul-de-sac and that's the direction we headed, running as fast as we could. We briefly split up. The men that were chasing us only followed one of us kids. He made the colossal mistake of running straight to his house and through the front door. From there our crime spree ended. A few days later I was in class when I was called to the office. When I got there my father was sitting with a man I'd never seen before. He was wearing a black suit with a black tie. I had to go before the principal, my father and a member of the United States Secret Service. Although they take the counterfeiting of US currency very seriously, they understood that it was just a bunch of knucklehead kids making quarters to play video games. He actually told me that he was impressed with the quality of the quarters. He also said that they had recovered over 75 in fake quarters. We had made and used over 300 quarters. We had to make restitution for the money and the charge was placed on our juvenile records. It was explained to us that if we kept our noses clean the charge would be expunged. Luckily for me, I learned my lesson and stayed on the straight and narrow for the rest of my young adult life. And that, fellow redditors, is how I was charged with counterfeiting US currency. If that doesn't define the meaning of a crazy crime, I don't know what would. Somewhere there's a tire shop owner who retired on all the money he got from selling prematurely worn tires. This has to be the best comment in this whole post.